Alrighty, so before I get started here, I just wanted to give you a brief summary of my background and the experience to what led me to creating this webinar for you today. Prior to working at Shopify, I was a senior graphic designer for a company here in Victoria, where I had the opportunity to build a division of the business from the ground up. And due to my successes there, I ended up working with a ton of big businesses, high-profile clients, and even some celebrities. I also ran my own freelance design business for about 3.5 years, where I helped local businesses boost their online presence, start selling online, and develop marketing strategies using social media. This experience taught me the importance of thoughtful UX and UI, which is user experience and user interface at any scale, which is what I'm here to talk to you about. And over the course of this presentation, we are going to learn about some basic design principles, including cognitive overload, dark patterns, and designing for conversion. We're going to learn about how to recognize design elements that can negatively impact business and how to make positive adjustments that will help to increase sales. So the first topic I'm going to talk about here is cognitive overload. And if you're not familiar with that term, cognitive overload refers to the time and energy required to make a decision. An increase in cognitive overload results in a loss of conversion as the decision-making process becomes more labor-intensive. This is cited as the main reason users abandon tasks and is the leading cause of cart abandonment. So under the umbrella of cognitive overload, I'm going to talk about mental models, choice paralysis, and perception of ease. For mental models, basically what a mental model is, if you think over time, each person builds up a mental model of how the world works. These models are basic assumptions and processes that we use to help us make decisions and complete daily tasks. So it's basically how you expect things to look, how you expect things to function, just basically what your perception of how things should be. And an example I'm going to give here is using predictive placement. So in this example, you can see that the cart is in the upper right-hand corner, and you may not even realize this, but the majority of e-commerce has the cart in the same place. This is to kind of fit that mental model of always having something in the same place so that users aren't creating cognitive load trying to find where the cart is. And a deviation from that predictive placement can create cognitive overload. Even something as small as moving the cart to the other side of the page. A user who is wanting to make that an automatic process, suddenly they have to think about it. And even if it's just for a second, that is 1 second that is slowing the user down. There's also a real big temptation, especially with new merchants or new entrepreneurs, to create something unique, something no one's ever seen before, something completely out of the box. But this can actually increase cognitive overload. It's important to pay attention to trends in UI for this reason. And something I always suggest is to research brands similar to yours and take a look at what their purchasing journey looks like. And a purchasing journey is basically the entire process from when you first land on the homepage till you check out. So what's the layout of their product pages? What does their navigation structure look like? Where is their cart button? By following a similar layout, you're creating something that you know your users will be familiar with and something that will automatically just help to reduce cognitive overload. Another thing I'm going to talk about is choice paralysis. Essentially, the more choices we have, the more cognitive load is required to make a decision. And if it takes too long to make a decision, it's common for customers to give up entirely. This is known as choice paralysis. And I've got a great example here of some information overload. Having too many competing elements or too many products across too broad a category will be automatically overwhelming for the user. When a user lands on your website, it should be immediately clear who you are and what you sell. Offering too many products at one time can also be an issue. When you're looking at a collection page, for example, you're looking at a list of products. Your mind is making a subconscious comparison between all of the products that they see at a time. So from there, they will pick their favorite out of that selection, move on to the product page where they're more likely to add to their cart. However, if you show them too many options at one time, making that subconscious comparison becomes a lot more difficult and labor intensive. Our team in theme support at Shopify does not does not support implementing infinite scroll, where more products load the more you scroll for this reason. And there are actually some browsers that are considering banning infinite scroll as it's considered an addictive activity. Another great thing to think about is your navigation. Crowded navigation can create cognitive overload because if a customer has to read a giant list of options, they're much less likely to engage. You want to categorize your navigation in a way that makes sense. You can see in these examples here on the right, you've just got a simple, 4 topics. They're simple. Are you looking for men's, women's, or sale? You can also break them down into drop-down menus, which is also super helpful. Say, for example, on the left, if I'm looking at a website and I'm like, okay, well, I'm a woman. I want to look at women's clothes, but there's women's pants, but then there's just sweaters. So that just automatically gets a little bit confusing. There is also a little bit of misconception for some merchants creating websites that the less clicks, the better. And to some degree, that may be true, but when it comes to the navigation, you want to break it down into as simple choices as possible. So even if you're using a drop-down menu, okay, I'm a woman, I'm going to click on women's, obviously. And then if you have a list of, tops, bottoms, whatever, even if you have further subcategories, you're breaking that down into little bite-sized decisions, which helps to alleviate that cognitive load. Perception of ease is another great thing to take into account. Aesthetics play a huge role in mental effort involved when using an interface. It creates a perception of ease through familiar layouts, simple pages and content, relevant imagery, consistent brand colors, positive wording, and effective white space, which I'm going to talk a little bit more a bit later. Essentially, if something is pleasing to look at, customers are more likely to persevere through the purchasing journey. It also helps to build trust because if a user lands on a website and it's thought out, there's a good logo, consistent color scheme, they know that someone on the other end has put a lot of time and effort and care into their user interface, into how their users are interacting with their business. So you're automatically building a level of trust as well. Here's a really good example of thoughtful UI. You can see there's a big, bold imagery. You can tell right away that they sell jewelry. You've got the navigation at the top, super clear. You've got the cart and search in the upper right-hand corner. You've got a lot of white space around the calls to action, so you know exactly where you need to click. So this is just a great example of a super, super clean, thoughtful user interface. And we've also got an announcement bar at the top, which is a really great way to announce things like sales, or over this past year, I know a lot of businesses have been putting their COVID protocols in their announcement bar, just like a great non-intrusive way to add little tidbits of information. In this example, they're giving worldwide shipping. So next I'm going to talk about dark patterns. And if you haven't heard that term before, a dark pattern refers to a user interface or element that has been carefully crafted to trick users into performing a task. So essentially, if you think about fostering an environment for impulse purchases, some of these, I'm going to show some examples, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with some of them. Using dark patterns in your user interface can lead to support debt, complaints, returns, chargebacks, loss of loyalty, and hurt brand image and reputation, which are all things you don't want as a business. Under the umbrella of dark patterns, I'm going to talk about deceptive practices, risk versus reward, and ethical alternatives. So some great examples of dark patterns may include deceptive or misleading claims, animated buttons, false inventory warnings, disruptive apps, hidden costs, etc. And those are just a few examples of the types of dark patterns you commonly see throughout the e-commerce world. And I'll show you some specific examples. So the first one I'm going to talk about is scarcity, which is essentially emphasizing limited stock, high demand, or limited time offers. In this example here, scarcity is represented as 3 shoppers are looking at this and only 3 units remaining. Customers or users are very suspicious of this automatically. Also, pressuring users into making a sale increases the likelihood that they're going to change their mind. Other examples you may see are, buy in the next 5 minutes, or any kind of apps or other elements that are giving you fabricated figures. So, it's great to encourage users to make a purchase, obviously, but if users feel like they're being tricked into it, or if they're feeling rushed through their purchase, they're more likely to return or be dissatisfied with the purchase that they make. This is another example that I really like, inflated pricing, which essentially is advertising an artificially high original price. So in this example, you can see that the business was willing to offer an 83% discount just because the user was willing to leave the product page. And from the merchant's point of view, it's like, well, I'm gonna give them an offer that they can't refuse, even though they were gonna abandon the page. I'm gonna grab them with this great discount. They're gonna, feel valued, all this stuff. However, from a user's perspective, if I were to see this on a website, I would think, okay, so if you're willing to offer me 83% off just because I was going to abandon the page, then why would I ever pay full price for your products? That user is going to be more likely to only hunt for deals and not want to pay full price, or be suspicious of your full pricing, which obviously aren't things that are great. Another great example, which I'm sure you will all be familiar with, is pop-ups. And as a UI designer, I like to think of pop-ups as the bane of my existence, which may be a bit extreme, but I'll explain a little bit more. By pop-ups, I'm referring to any apps or elements designed to distract the customer. What this does is it blocks the natural purchasing journey and tells the customer that what you want them to look at is more important than discovering things at their own pace. This specific example includes a couple of different things. First of all, the pop-up is huge. It's almost completely blocking the site. So it's, very, very distracting. For users who don't know that you can click away from a pop-up to close it, the X is very hard to see. You can see it's right at the bottom, and it also has a note that says, "No, I don't feel lucky." So that's a little bit manipulative right there. A lot of users will see this and think that they need to enter their email address in order to view your site. And yet you're potentially offering them a discount, but as you can see, there's an almost no luck today and next time. So the user isn't even guaranteed a deal. There's just a lot that is discouraging to users, especially if this comes up right at the beginning of the website. And this is something that I see a lot with especially new merchants, but even tenured merchants can do this as well, where they show a pop-up within the first 5 seconds of landing on the site. Now, if I have never visited your website before, I don't know what your business is, I don't know what you sell, I don't know if it's a good fit for me. Within the first 5 seconds, why am I going to sign up for your newsletter? Why am I going to engage with this pop-up if I don't even know what your business is about yet? There are, there can be tactful ways to use pop-ups if you feel, you really like them and you really want to use them for your business. I would just be conscious of the timing, maybe offer it on the product pages once the user has already, had the opportunity to browse through a few of your pages. Most often pop-ups are used for newsletter signups. What's actually more successful than pop-ups is including the newsletter either in the header or the footer. This makes it available to every page. Especially in the footer, that's the most common. That's where users are used to looking for that kind of thing. And you can always include, if you're including a discount for signups, you can always include a little note with that. If you're on Shopify and using a Shopify supported theme, our theme support team can help to, add little custom notes and things like that to the newsletter to help it stand out. But that's my advice if you're looking to get newsletter signups, is just add something that the user will always have visible. If they are shown a pop-up in the first 5 seconds and they close it, and then they want to sign up for the newsletter later, lots of times users won't know how to do it, and that's such a missed opportunity. So that's kind of my advice there. Distracting call to action is another very common dark pattern, and I'm sure even as I'm talking, while you look around the page, your eyes are going to be redirected back to that wiggling add to cart. And this is on purpose. Obviously, the point is to draw the attention back to the add to cart. But something that you may not think of is that this can actually cause customers to miss crucial information or add the wrong variant to their cart, which increases returns, chargebacks, and buyer's remorse. This is especially true if you're selling more technical or complicated products that require a little bit of explanation. If a user is reading through something, trying to read through the description, and their eyes are constantly being interrupted by this, animated element, they're more likely to not catch some of that information that they need in order to make an informed purchase. In each of these examples that I showed, we're essentially leading customers to believe inflated claims and blocking customers from making decisions at their own pace. However, there is a reason why we see these dark patterns so frequently. There are short-term benefits. It increases the likelihood of a first-time purchase, and it can have a significant impact on overall conversion. However, in the long term, it's going to create more instances of buyer's remorse, returns, negative reviews, chargebacks, and complaints, which can be difficult to come back from. As I mentioned earlier, customers who feel manipulated are unlikely to return. And since acquiring a new customer can cost up to 5 times more than retaining an existing customer, the merchant can end up paying the price in the long term. So, in other words, gain in the short term, but there can be significant loss in the long term. Now, this isn't to say that persuasion has no place in e-commerce. Obviously, we want to uh, encourage sales to our business. That's the whole point of selling things, is for people to buy them. But you can encourage purchases in a way that are transparent and beneficial to the user. And I have some examples. I don't have slides for these because they're a little bit more direct, but some really great examples you can use are reviews and testimonials, which is also known as social proof. This basically tells the user right away that there are other users who have not only made a purchase, but they've received their purchase, they liked the purchase, or even if there's a negative review, if you're able to address it publicly, like say you get a negative review on social media and you say, you post something publicly like, thanks so much for leaving this feedback, like we're going to reach out to you and see how we can make it right, or whatever the case may be. That lets the user know that there's really someone on the other side that cares. Customer rewards is another great one. Obviously, rewarding people for coming back is always, a great benefit to the user and encourages repeat business. This can be things like collecting points, or spend X amount and get a little freebie, or things like that. Anything that just rewards the user for engaging with your business is automatically going to generate a higher instance of repeat business. Another one that I think is very underrated is having a great return policy. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get more returns, but what you are doing is you're fostering that same environment of an impulse purchase, or people may be purchasing things that they otherwise may not have if they feel secure that they are able to return it. I myself am very guilty of this. For example, like Sephora has a great, fantastic return policy. I make risky purchases on stuff just to try, and 98% of the time, I don't end up returning it. Just for convenience sake, I already have it. I decided to purchase it. I feel better about that decision, even if I don't like the product, because I made that as an informed decision. I wasn't tricked into it. Again, credibility is super important. You should only be making claims that are truthful in nature. You want to stay away from clickbait or any misleading claims, and you want to let customers make the decision on their own. The next topic I'm going to talk about is designing for conversion. Customers don't go from the homepage to the checkout in a single click, so you must be mindful of the entire purchasing journey, which includes the brand and product discovery as well. You want to provide customers with all the information they need in an easy to digest format and remove all instances of distraction, because an informed customer is what? A confident one. Under the umbrella of designing for conversion, I'm going to talk about convincing copy, effective call to action, and countering cart abandonment. So for convincing copy, people on average tend to read less than 30% of the copy on a page. They're more likely to scan for vital information. As an additional note, the wording associated with a call to action is one of the most influencing factors in conversion. And a call to action essentially refers to like the add to cart button or sign up to newsletter button, anything that encourages the user to perform an action. Now with copy is where you can really be creative. I kind of said before that your layout should adhere to the user's mental model, but for your copy, this is where you can really show your brand personality and connect with the user. With that said, all copy should be relevant, clear, concise, and interesting. And a prime example I can give of this, if anyone has ever looked up a recipe online, I'm like, I want to know how to bake some cookies. And I go to a recipe page and it's like 5 paragraphs on the chef's, brisk morning walk they took on a lovely fall day. And it reminded them of the aroma of their grandmother's kitchen. It's like, that's great, but I really just want to know how to make the cookies. So that's an example of where, it's great to have all the additional stuff, but really you want to provide the user with the meat and potatoes since they're only going to read 30% of the copy anyway. One of the best ways to do this is to introduce structure and benefits. And you can aid clarity while supporting scannability by introducing structure. So these two examples here, you can see look very different. It's essentially all the same text. However, on the right, you've got things broken down into categories, little bite-sized pieces, added some bullet points. The headers are nice and bold. And when I look at this on the right, even if I'm not interested in reading through all of the details of each thing, I know, okay, it's cleansing and moisturizing. So this is for a soap. Great. Soap should be cleansing and moisturizing. It has an irresistible scent. Fabulous. Love to smell good. It's natural. Awesome. That's important to me. And it has therapeutic benefits. Great. That's going to make me feel good. And it's important to include benefits in addition to features because it's great to tell a user what your product is, but it's also a good idea to tell them how it will fit into their life, how it will make their life better, how they will benefit from owning this product. Breaking things down this way also benefits your SEO because you're being more mindful about the keywords that your user is going to be looking for. So if you look at it through a lens of they're just going to be scanning for the most important information, what's going to be the most important keywords for the users to pick up on? That automatically can help to boost your SEO because you're being more mindful of those keywords and what your users are going to be searching. And then obviously the example on the left is just a wall of text. Even, I don't even want to read it and I wrote it. So good example there. Another thing to keep in mind is to not false advertise. If you're going to be breaking things down, make sure that all your claims are truthful. If you're making claims that aren't truthful, if the user puts through a chargeback, the bank's automatically going to side with them because you're offering incorrect information. Effective call to action is arguably the most important part of the buying process. As I mentioned, this can include newsletter signups, add to cart and checkout buttons, requests for feedback, and these are all crucial for conversion and warrant thoughtful placement and priority. I've got some good examples here. Button placement is really important. In this example, I'm talking about the add to cart button. A request that we see in our theme support team sometimes is to move the call to action or the add to cart button right to the top of the page. But similar to the pop-up, a user is not going to land on the product page and just immediately rapid click the add to cart button. It's better to include the add to cart button somewhere in the middle of the information so that even if the user is looking through images or they're reading through descriptions, the call to action is always in their line of sight. In this example, it's talking about above the fold versus below the fold. And if you're not familiar with that term, it refers to back when newspapers were a primary way that people were receiving information. You always want it to be above the fold. You want it to be that first thing that the user saw. However, with e-commerce, like I said, it's better to have that call to action kind of in the middle of the content. And in this case, this came from an independent study where moving the call to action lower in the page and having it surrounded by information created a 304% increase in conversions. This is another great one that is very underutilized and very effective, and that is creating emphasis using imagery. In this example, you can see that the user's hands are crossed directly over that call to action. So you see all these vertical lines around the page that are redirecting back to that call to action. And even if you're not, if you're not thinking about it, your eyes are going to be subconsciously redirected back to that button. So in a way, it's kind of similar to the shaking add to cart button. However, this is a more natural, subconscious way to redirect the user's eye that's not going to be distracting to them. Another great place to implement this is on product pages. Say, for example, you're selling a t-shirt and you have a person wearing the t-shirt. If you have that person slightly facing towards the add to cart button, you're going to automatically get higher instances of clicks. And I know that that sounds crazy, but it is absolutely true. Negative space and white space is also super important, and probably the most common request we see in theme support is to remove white space. However, white space helps to remove competing elements and helps call to actions to stand out. In this example, this one's kind of a 2-for-1. You've got the imagery with the popcorn bag opening directly towards the call to action, but you've also got a lot of white space and a bold color for the call to action that stands out against the background, that big bold black button. You're automatically going to have your eye drawn back to that, and there's no competing elements, so there's no confusion as to where you need to click. All of our Shopify themes, so that's any free theme that you get from Shopify, are all purposely designed to include white space for this reason. Another great way to help differentiate buttons from other elements on the theme is to use contrasting colors. And in this example, I know that blue and green aren't necessarily contrasting colors, but if you use a button that's, say, an opposite color on the color wheel from your brand color. So if your brand is all yellow, maybe you want to use purple call to actions. It'll really, really help the call to actions to stand out. It's also great to use consistent colors for all of your call to actions. So another request we see often is to change the color of just the add to cart button. But having all of your calls to action across your website be the same tells the user subconsciously whenever they see that color that there's something to click, there's an action to perform, and it's going to take a little bit of that cognitive load out of that. For countering cart abandonment, obviously being productive about cart abandonment helps to increase sales. And this can be done by removing distractions, providing positive reinforcement, and creating a sense of positive momentum or progression. Thinking about the cart page should have one purpose and one purpose only. That is to preview the cart items and proceed to checkout. There should be no new information presented on the cart page. No product recommendations, not newsletter signups, or basically any reason to distract the user from the main objective, which is to make their purchase. You want to make your store policies clear and easy to find earlier in the purchasing journey. It's common for merchants to have their, return policy and shipping policy on their cart page. However, if a user has already decided that they want to make the purchase, you don't want them to get to the cart page and be like, ooh, I didn't think about what their return policy might be, and then take them away from the cart page and have them go back and reading other information. Even the same with recommending products. It's better to do that on the product page than on the cart page. Again, once the user is viewing their cart, that means that they're most likely ready to make a purchase, and you don't want anything to block that. If there is anything that you want to include on your cart page, it may just be an encouraging customer note like, you're almost there, or one more step, or soon these goodies will be yours, something like that. You can also leave a little note that's like, once you've placed your order, you'll receive an email from us that is kind of, reassuring to the user that their money isn't just going to go into the void. They know to expect some sort of communication. And that's all the goodies I've got to walk you through today. So what we've learned through this webinar is the psychology behind some basic design principles we see on a regular basis, how to spot design elements that can negatively impact shops, and some ethical alternatives that can still help you to boost that conversion. And that's my presentation. Thank you all for coming and listening and all that good stuff.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Tessa. So I did see that Natalie had her hand up at one point. So I'm going to go through and allow people to talk. Now, what I would like to ask is use the raise hand feature. If you have a question, it'll queue you up to ask your question. So I'm just going through manually right now, giving everybody the permission to unmute their mic. Natalie, did you want to come on and just gave you permission here. If you want to come on and ask your question, feel free.
Oh yeah, hi there. I just
Hi.
had a question about your convincing copy. So when you were going through with doing the bullets and bolding the headers, etc. So I guess that just has to do with describing products. I'm wondering if you use those principles across other parts of your site, like say the about us, or I don't know, philosophies or whatever it is. I'm wondering how you would kind of change that structure so that it's not just a big chunky paragraph.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, introducing structure regardless is going to be super beneficial, especially when it comes to policy pages or anything where the information is really important. For things like about us and stuff like that, you can break it up using images, you can break it up using colors. Having, headers and subheaders, things like that really helps to break up and also provide priority of like what is the most important thing for the user to view. So if you think about if the user's only going to read 30%, if you come into it with that perception, what's the 30% you really want them to focus on? And you can use like color, bolding, white space around it to really draw the user to those specific parts. So yeah, definitely beneficial to use anywhere on your website that you have text, so it's not just a wall.
So you could just make certain sentences different colors, or do you think that looks messy, or I guess just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's within your brand colors, color is a great way to differentiate. And yeah, just using headings is a really great example. Even if a user doesn't want to read everything, but there are particular things like in your About Us, for example, if there's something you're doing like your company has a positive impact on the environment, that may be something that's really important to the user. So you might want to create a heading specifically for that that outlines more of those details that kind of guides the user where they want to look.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thanks for the question, Natalie. And I've got a question in the chat from Ross, and he asks, "Can you comment on your experience with Shopify?" That's a broad question, Ross. Did you have anything specific to the experience with Shopify? Do you mean more in terms of being an employee, or was there something more specific? Ross?
Pros and cons of using. So that's still a broad question, but I can answer that for
Okay,
sure.
go ahead. I just wanted to give you a little bit of leg room to work with.
So as a designer, I have worked with a lot of different e-commerce platforms. I can say with confidence, and it's not just because I work for Shopify, but Shopify as a platform has a lot of features that no other e-commerce businesses offer. It's more than just somewhere to host your website. It's more than just a theme. It's accounting, it's data, it's analytics, it's customer data, it's staff accounts, it's brick and mortar, it's POS, it's all of these things. In all of the other e-commerce platforms that I've used in the past, you're always kind of picking and choosing the features that you want. So for example, I really liked to use Wix because it was really great for being able to design the website however you want, but their e-commerce functionality was really lacking, super slow. It also took like 3-4 days to hear from support if you ever had a problem. Things like you couldn't export products, things like that. Or with I also used Magento in the past, which has fantastic e-commerce functionality, but you have almost no access to how your website looks and functions. And if you want to make updates to your theme, for the most part, you have to hire one of their partner developers, which becomes very expensive very quickly. So those are kind of some of the reasons why I prefer Shopify. After I joined Shopify, I ended up recommending Shopify to a lot of my previous clients who I know were compromising on features one way or the other. And in the long run, it's been very successful. So that's a little bit my personal experience. Let me know if I didn't answer your question or if you have any other details you'd like to hear.
Okay, yeah, definitely. If there's a follow-up question, let us know. So Ross says, thank you. Would you recommend building a Shopify site yourself or use a service to do this?
Ultimately, it's up to you. We do have an expert ecosystem that is fantastic. They're all independent partners who are vetted in Shopify, and they also are can cost significantly less than hiring your own developer. So you can definitely use the expert ecosystem if you're wanting some help. However, Shopify does provide you all of the tools to be able to do it yourself. And if you consider that, I think our basic plan is only $29 a month. We have guides, we have YouTube, we have a fantastic help center. We also have support for where you can talk to support 24/7. You don't have to have a crazy long wait to be able to, find someone to help you. And even if you get started on your own and you're coming into some roadblocks, you can always hire an expert down the line to kind of help you. Otherwise, our support team is always there to answer any questions or provide you any resources. Great questions, though, if anyone's not using Shopify. I can see there's some more questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to go through a couple of these. The first one is from Darshil. How can I figure out which 30% of the content is important and most consumed? This is a great question. Ultimately, you can start from the perspective of what do you think is the most important to your user? What is the most important to you as a business? What is the most important to communicate? Different users obviously are going to have different priorities of what they want. But if you're structuring your information in a way that like each kind of topic or each section is well defined, the user is able to make that decision on their own. You want to make sure that all the information is available, but that you're making it as scannable as possible. So using those keywords. You can also always ask for feedback. If you're offering reviews on your site, you can look through your reviews and see, what are people kind of picking up on? Are the things that they're specifically mentioning in their reviews of things that are important to them? That can kind of give you a little bit of a key as well. Or you can also, do feedback surveys. Lots of different ways to do it, but ultimately you want to start with, what is the most important thing for you to communicate? I hope that's answered your question.
Hi, so I'm going to take over for Bridget for a second here. Okay, so we have a question regarding call to action. So it says you show an example where shifting call to action below the fold increases click efficiency. What about having multiple call to action spaces within a single page or a scrolling call to action that follows user screen?
So this is a great question. When it comes to call to action, you obviously, keeping cognitive overload in mind, you don't want to offer too many options at the same time. So say, for example, if it's add to cart, I would not recommend having multiple add to cart options. I would recommend just having one. Having a call to action that scrolls with the user can be beneficial because it's always within their line of view. But I would recommend, like, if you're having multiple, like say you have an add to cart button, you have a shop similar products button, and you have a newsletter sign up button. You want to make sure that they are spaced apart. Make sure that they have a little bit of white space around them, create a little bit of emphasis. And don't try and make them too close together. There are cases like on Shopify, we have the add to cart button and then the dynamic checkout button or buy it now button right below. These are essentially two ways to do the same thing. So in that case, it's okay to have them right next to each other. Do you want to purchase this one product right now, or do you want to add it to your cart? Because those decisions kind of go together. But that would kind of be my advice there.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So next one, is, do you recommend any theme builders for Shopify, for example, to create custom pages to highlight services, especially when the business is not just focused on e-commerce? I've noticed Shopify has some restrictions to add custom content on pages.
Yeah, so there are some very exciting updates coming to our themes in 2021 that are going to allow for more customization on more than just the homepage. But with that said, we do have some great apps that are called page builder apps. And these help you to customize pages without needing custom code, without needing to go into the back end. If you do want to create something truly custom with code, like I said, our expert community is really, really great. You can hire tons of designers, lots of options to choose from, or if you want to get matched with someone who fits your needs, you can post a job. That will allow basically the experts to come to you and kind of tell you what they can offer. But page builder apps are a great place to start, especially if you don't really know 100% what you want. You could also always start with a page builder app, design something how you want. And then if you don't want to use an app, you could reach out to an expert, and instead of paying monthly, then you've got that, one-time purchase of something coded into your site.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. So next one, on a website landing page, where should testimonials be placed? Near the top, bottom, middle, etc.?
I would say either the middle or the bottom. I would probably lean towards the bottom. If this is the user's first time entering the page, it's great to know that customers like the product, but I don't know what the product is yet. So I would include it, kind of in the middle once the user has had the opportunity to get a little familiar with it, or if it's on a landing page, for example, to learn a little bit more information before, like I said, it's great if people loved it, but if you don't know what they love yet, it might be a little bit confusing, and it'll take a little bit longer for the user to get to kind of the meat and potatoes of the content. So I would say towards the middle or the bottom for sure.
Awesome. All right. Oh, wow. You're getting so many questions. My goodness. Do you recommend any page builders? I've come across Accesso Page Builder.
Yeah, two of our most popular would be Pagefly and what's the other one? I think it starts with, Gem Pages. I think those are our two most popular. I know they have a ton of options, but you can also just go to our app store and just type in Page Builder, and it'll show you all the different options, and you can, see reviews, and you can see, what specifically the apps offers, because some might suit your business better than others.
Awesome. I'm actually going to jump into the chat. There's another question from Ross, and he says, what is your advice on the use of videos to explain the product benefits?
Videos are great if you are making them accessible. So if you're making sure that they have, the text at the bottom, never have a video that autoplays. If you have any videos or music that autoplays with audio, that's basically a guaranteed way to lose customers. For me personally, if I hear sound coming out of a website, I panic, close it as fast as I can. Videos are great, especially if it's more technical or if you want to show the usage of a product. Like, for example, I helped a merchant, I think it was last year, who I ended up making a purchase from, where it's like a mountable roller ball that you can help like to massage knots out of your back, like as kind of a massager. But if you just look at the product, you can't really tell what it is or what it does. Like, it's hard to visualize. So having those video explanations that show how the product can be used can be super helpful for the user. Just make sure that you have captions, make sure that you have very clear audio, so that people who are maybe not accessing websites the way the general public does, that they can still also be part of that content.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you. I see Natalie has a hand up. Natalie, do you want to ask your question?
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, sorry, I was just wondering what your stance is on the background color of a website. So I don't know if it should always be default white, or what you can say about that.
Yeah, I mean, white is the go-to. Obviously, that's the default on most websites. It's not a bad idea to use colors as long as you are, again, being mindful of accessibility and how colors can display against each other. So, for example, people who are colorblind may have difficulty absorbing the information from your website if you're using a lot of similar colors, especially with a colored background. One thing I definitely recommend against is using images as your background. This makes the text on your website very difficult to see, and it also can really create cognitive overload because there's so much content to constantly be absorbed. Even if it's just a subtle pattern, it can still be distracting to the user. But using colors, like using a pale color specifically, as long as you're using your body text and everything is a high contrast color to the background color, using color is totally fine.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. So back to the Q&A now. As a volunteer graphic designer, I was wondering if you would know how the copyright laws play out. Does the designer own the designs or does the company, since I'm giving them permission to use them?
It really depends. I had my own graphic design business, as I mentioned in my intro. And something that I always made sure to do was, whether they were paying for it or not, was to make sure that they sign an agreement so that you are setting those terms. So if you want the content to ultimately be owned by you, even if the business is using it, you should be stating that in an agreement in advance. If you want the company to have full permission, then you can state that. Either way, if things don't go how you want, you then have that agreement to rely upon.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, for social media posting, do you think it'd be more beneficial to use real life images using photography or create characters and images using digital drawings?
I mean, this can kind of depend on the business. It's always great to use real life images of your product so that people can see how they're really going to look in real life, how they're going to fit, or how it's going to function in their life. If you are doing something that's more technical and maybe you want to show illustrate the intricacies that go into it, illustration can be a very, very powerful device to use in your branding as long as it's done tactfully. I would say when it comes to actual products, I would recommend using actual photography. But if it's more like explanations or brand related stuff, or kind of illustrations to go along with real life imagery, then illustration all the way.
Okay, and I see a question in this chat from Ross. Has anyone successfully used Shopify as a mechanism to see if there's a demand for a product before they actually make it? So I'm not sure if anyone from the group would want to weigh in on that, or if you have any idea.
If you're interested in gauging the market, what I would recommend is to do a sort of pre-order. Like if you think of how Kickstarter works, for example, where they're offering a product, you're getting pre-orders, whatever the case may be, before the product is actually being sold. There are definitely ways to do that within Shopify. We have a ton of fantastic apps that can help add different types of pre-order functionality, whether you are accepting payment at that time or if you are going to accept payment down the line. If you're also really good with your SEO, you don't even have to have a purchasing mechanism. Just getting your product out there. You can have, in this case, having like a landing page with a newsletter sign up for more information can be a really great way to gauge interest. Again, if you're going either way, if you want to gauge interest before you're actually selling a product, learning a ton about SEO and making sure that your product is going to be showing up to a lot of users so that they have, you're being, as many people as possible are seeing it, would definitely be my advice. But Shopify can totally be used to do that. And if you're using a free theme by Shopify, you can use your theme support offers 60 minutes of complimentary design time, and we can even help to remove the prices and add to cart from your theme, making sure that it's only displaying what you want it to display.
Perfect. Do we have any more questions before I hand it back over to Bridget?
Okay, so if there are no more questions, we've got 5 minutes left. So if you have one, raise your hand. We've got some time. And my apologies, I'm experiencing some technical difficulties. So if I disappear magically, it's because my connection's bad. So thank you to Tessa, and thank you to Lindsay at the back end there for this wonderful session today. And thank you to everybody who attended and had such great questions. It's always nice when there's a lot of engagement. And if there are follow-up questions, please know that we're more than happy to connect you with Lindsay and or Tessa, whomever you'd like to speak to regarding maybe your own Shopify store, or if you're interested in getting more into e-commerce, this is a great way to do it. So we're happy to put you in contact. And if there's any questions regarding the recording, after this session, I will do a follow-up within 2 to 3 business days and share the recording for anybody that attended. And we will have it up on our resource page on our website. So thank you again, Tessa, and thank you to everyone that joined. I see a thank you there in the chat. And again, thank you for all the great questions. You guys made this a wonderful session, and have a wonderful rest of the day.